All right, everybody. Welcome back to another edition of the Teardown. My name is Jeff Gluck. I'm along with my coworker, Jordan Bianchi. We are motorsports writers for The Athletic. And we're here to talk about the Michigan race. I was actually at Michigan, but now I'm obviously, as you can see, if you're watching the YouTube version of this, not at Michigan. Came back this morning, flew back home after seeing the first 75 laps yesterday and watched the rest on TV. However, I did miss a thrilling battle for the win between Chris Buescher and Martin Truex Jr. Ultimately, Chris Buescher prevails, and boy, did he turn the entire narrative on its head, because last week at Richmond, Jordan, we were like, oh, that's nice for Chris Buescher. No, they're not going to the final 8. Didn't I say that?
No, yeah.
Say?
And that's why I'm smiling.
I know you were.
Kids.
I knew you were going to say, I beat you to it. I knew you were going to bring that up immediately. I said, I don't think they can go to the final 8, though. They're not. Okay.
Just saying, I called Chase Elliott not making the playoffs on points. I called this. I'm just saying, you want to be on the right side of things, you come on my side. It is like they're running really well right now. They absolutely could make the 8. And these playoff points are going to help a lot. And yeah, I mean, it's hard not to like what they are right now. And I think the bigger point of this, they're the best 4 team right now, the organization, RFK. And I don't even think it's close. Like, it's like Penske's not in the discussion. Outside of Stewart-Haas Racing, outside of Kevin Harvick, Stewart-Haas Racing is not really doing anything consistently. RFK, because Brad is running great, they are easily the best Ford organization right now, and it's not close.
I mean, we mentioned it last week on the podcast. Bob had brought up, is RFK the best Ford team right now? And it's like, I mean, they've been doing okay, but like best Ford team, I don't know. That seems like a stretch, but yeah, I mean, look, man, when you win on 2 different types of tracks like this, Richmond's one thing, like even a short track's one thing, right? Like short track racing, we see here and there, like different people pop up. Like, oh, Ryan Preece will be fast or something like that. You're like, oh, how much do you really take out of that? But going into Michigan, the drivers we're talking about in the bullpen, this is the last true test of like, hey, this does a lot, because it takes everything to win at Michigan. It takes everything to go fast there. Engine, aero, good pit crew. I mean, execution. And so for Chris Buescher to do what he did today, yeah, you could say, hey, it's hard to pass the leader. It absolutely is. I'm sure it is. But Martin Truex Jr. at the end of stage 2 starts, makes the pit stop and comes all the way back up through, catches everybody, and then blasts past Daniel Suarez at the end like it was nothing, like it was easy. Well, Chris Buescher, he had that chance to do that on Chris Buescher for the last, 30 laps of the race or something. He couldn't do it. Chris Buescher executed flawlessly. Sure, they made their car better than it was early in the race, but he held off a really good car. He had a great performance. And when you factor in that Brad Keselowski also finishes 4th and was coming on strong, Brad says, boy, I wish we had gotten a caution, because I think we could have won as well. RFK's taken some major steps forward. And then all of a sudden you think about the implications of, okay, they won on a short track. They've won at a track that could translate to what we see at the 1.5 mile tracks and Darlington. So like, Darlington, Vegas, Homestead, Texas, Kansas. Okay, now all of a sudden, wait a minute too. Oh, he's good at road courses. Chris Buescher is. Oh, we talked about Fords in general are good at short tracks. All of a sudden, this kind of looks like it could unfold decently for Chris Buescher and RFK.
You mean like a deep playoff run, maybe like a round of 8? Oh, gee, shocking.
I'm saying I was wrong. I'm saying.
No, I mean, you're right. I mean, Michigan is a great bellwether track. It reminds me of how Indianapolis and the Oval used to be. You needed everything. And this is a good example of that. And I don't think it's coincidence today that the teams that we've kind of identified, the 11, the 19, I think we kind of agree on the 5, though they got some issues sometimes, they had good runs today. They had great runs today. And we kind of have to start having that conversation about the 17. And you look at it, and Chris is so underrated. And I can't say that enough. And it's weird to say about a guy who's won 2 races in a row and is a former Xfinity Series champion. But there really isn't a style track that he doesn't do well on. He's just never been in a situation with a team worthy that matches his abilities. It's always been with teams that are kind of middle of the road. He has to always punch above his weight class. And now that he's getting equipment that matches his skill set, he is showing he knows what to do with it. And he's only going to get better. And you'd think that RFK is only going to get better. And I think the other dynamic of this too is kudos to Brad Keselowski, because I mean he left the situation at Penske where I know I felt this way, and I think you did too. We're like, oof, what are you doing? Like, you're leaving a team that's as good as it gets, where you're going to contend for championships and you're going to have a potential to continue to build your legacy. It didn't quite make sense from the driver perspective, but from the owner perspective, he's, it's really impressive on what he's doing there and how he's rebuilt this organization. Because for a long time we've kind of talked about RFK when they've had these moments of fleeting success. We're like, oh, RFK's back, right? And it's never really stuck. This feels like it's going to stick, and not only is it going to stick, it's going to grow bigger.
Yeah, I'm still worried about getting too far ahead of ourselves. And obviously, last week I really didn't want to, because I said he wouldn't even make the final 8. And now I'm like,
when
okay.
has it ever stopped you?
Now, but let me ask you this, because I can tell you're very proud of yourself for saying this and saying the Chase Elliott thing. So if you're so confident, is Chris Buescher one of your final 4 picks right now?
No, and I will.
Oh, wait, wait a minute now.
Well,
I
I will. Let me put
so
the brakes
great.
in. Let me present the other side of this argument here.
Okay.
Of why, like, I mean, in all, coming down from a level-headed perspective, we said a lot of the same things we're saying right now about the 17 team. We said last year about Kevin Harvick at this time, because Kevin won at Richmond, he won at Michigan, and it was like, whoa, or vice versa, right? It was Michigan,
Yeah, it was
then
Michigan
Richmond.
first, then Richmond.
Yeah, and it snapped a losing streak, and they were really starting to punch above their weight class. And you're like, oh, okay, they're ramping up. Okay, this is the vintage 4 team, and then things happen in that first round. So I think the 17 team has a runway to do something and impress. But you don't know how the playoffs are going to unfold. But I like the fact that they're building up their playoff points. I like the position they're in. I mean, could they make it to the Final Four? I mean, you look at the tracks that set up that round, 2.5-mile racetracks that have a lot of characteristics to Michigan. Yeah, it's possible. I mean, there are other teams that I would probably put ahead of them, but they're starting to make a case for themselves.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's just, it feels like such a small sample size, but yet it's such a big statement. So what do you do with that information? Had Truex been able to pass him, if there's a late caution in this race, maybe it's a different story, because Truex wins, maybe Hamlin wins. Hamlin had a really fast car at the end there. Maybe Keselowski wins. Larson finished 5th. Larson didn't seem to really have it though. But maybe it's a different story. However, the fact that Buescher ran that well, even if he finishes 2nd or something, I still think it's a conversation of like, okay, we're still talking about, hey, RFK has made huge strides. I just think, it's too much in the moment and getting too swept up in a pretty short amount of time to say, wow, they're really going to be a contender now out of nowhere. How do you trust the team when you haven't seen this from them for that long of a time? I mean, can they sustain this? Can their pit crews, in a clutch situation, can they deliver? There's a lot that goes into a deep playoff run. And certainly it stacks up well for him. I think he'll have 2 great weeks ahead with the road courses. He's great there, things like that. But I just don't know what to do with it yet. I don't know what to how deep to have it. I think it's a great subplot for the playoffs that, ooh, this is interesting. We didn't see this team coming, and it's just sort of they got hot. But the Toyotas look good overall. Yeah. I mean, Bell, despite his deal, rallied back to finish 13th. Ty Gibbs finished 11th. So you had all 4 of the JGR cars in the top 13. Now, Tyler Reddick, I mean, you look at his deal with another mistake from the pit crew, another loose wheel. He had just gotten ahead of Buescher. I mean, he and Buescher pitted on the same lap there.
Yep.
And so, and remember from there, the last 67 laps of this race were green. Yep. So it was going to play straight up, right? Like it was a straight, that's why Truex never got a chance at him on a restart or anything and had to track him down. Reddick could have easily won this race. And that would have been something different that we were talking about. So
we have said that so many times this year, though, that Reddick should have won the race or should have had a better finish they did. And I'll throw Bell in there too, because it's another, issue that just keeps hindering these two teams where you look at it and you're like, man, they've got all of the potential to do something big. And every single week we're stubbing our toe and new different ways. And I mean, you heard Reddick's meltdown. Let me take that back. That's not a meltdown. It was justified what he said. Like, you can understand why he was so frustrated on the radio. Like, you just get to a point. And what's interesting about this is this has been an issue with 2311 almost since its inception, where it's like they find new and inventive ways to take potentially good days and turn them into something else. And a lot of it has to do with on pit road. And this year they have their own pit crew for the first time. And it looks a lot like they did when they had the old pit crew. And it's the same stuff over and over again.
Yeah, it's frustrating for them. I mean, Bubba Wallace had a good car today, ends up finishing 18th. I'm not exactly sure if they had a bad stop at some point, because
I think they did.
Yeah. Maybe his last stop there, because it seemed like he was, I don't think TV ever covered it, but it just
they made
like
an extra pit stop too for fuel there, and that cost them track position. And interesting day. And I know you and I differ on this, and I understand what they were doing in terms of the big picture. We're chasing points and we're trying to put ourselves in a good spot. But I feel like they could have gotten those points. They only picked up 4 points today. And I feel like you could have gone for the win and still put yourself in a really good position and not had any downside risk of really losing anything. You still probably would have netted out with a top 10 finish. And for a team that doesn't have a win this year, and it circled this track as an opportunity to win, I felt like this was a really good chance to do that and put yourself in a playoff spot. And again, they're in a really good spot, but you still could have solidified that today. So curious strategy there, which I know we kind of differ on.
Yeah, I actually, and I'll go back to my original point in a minute. I got sidetracked talking about Reddick and stuff, but I actually think they made the right decision there when they tried to take the stage points, because I mean, look, you do want to win, but you're also in a position where you've got to try to pad that lead or that cushion to 16th place, just in case there is one new winner in the next 3 weeks. You're in the playoffs comfortably, but you don't want to be all of a sudden, battling with Ty Gibbs or McDowell or whatever for that final spot. So he put himself in pretty good position there. Like he actually vaulted over Stenhouse. Now Bubba's 14th in points, Reddick's 13th in points. So they're
but that doesn't matter in the grand scheme, because Stenhouse has got to win. So
no, I get that. I'm just saying that shows you his level of consistency this year, because we've been talking about how Stenhouse has been consistent. Bubba just a few weeks ago, or not that long ago, was well out of the 16, and now he's comfortably in it. So I think that's what you need to do. Of course, he'd rather win, but you've got to get points when you can. But my larger point in bringing up the Reddick as part of the Toyotas as a whole is, the Toyotas are looking good. The Toyotas, I feel pretty confident about that they're going to have a strong playoffs. The Fords, even going into the race, yesterday, I would have thought, sorry. I mean, like, we've talked about the Fords on the big tracks just don't, you just don't feel good about it. I mean, short tracks, and I know Blaney got the win at the 600 stuff, but I don't know. Like I just, it felt like they're behind, and they've been missing something, and everything has to go perfect for them. But so for them to do this, I think that's important. The question now is, so where does this leave the Chevys? Because when we're trying to project here, we really got some incomplete information with the Chevys this week, because one of the top Chevys, Kyle Busch, is racing Blaney, basically takes himself out with the hard racing there. Then Chase Elliott, it seemed like he was going to have a top 10 day going, and just gets a flat tire out of nowhere, wrecks, his day's over. Byron, he's going to have a top 10 day and maybe better, and hits the wall, takes himself out. Bowman was going to have a top 10 day and just got caught up in that wreck. So, but okay, top 10 day, but like race winning speed, top 5. I don't know that we ever saw that.
We don't know.
Right. And so that we got sort of incomplete info from this.
You can go off of Kyle Larson and Kyle Larson in the top 5 today, but at no point did it ever look like he had a winning car.
And he said afterwards in his Chevy quotes that they put out that he had contact with Chase Briscoe at some point, and he said his car handled differently after that. They hit pretty hard. So, but yeah, it never felt like he was going to get up there and run with like Truex.
And it's hard to say. To your point, I mean, you say it's incomplete, and you're 100% right. We don't know. And I look at how the 19 car was today, and it's really hard to think that anybody was in that category. But when this race was restarted today, I never thought the 17 car was going to be a contender.
Now, wait a minute. Just on this same podcast equipment, words were spoken by Denny Hamlin saying that the 17 car on his podcast, he said, he was going through and he said, 17 car, he was talking about it's going to be fast. He said 17, 19, 11. There were three of the cars he mentioned, and those were the top 3. So I think Buescher, I didn't see it, but
I thought he had a good car, top 5, but winning. I mean, and Denny's obviously smarter than I am, because I didn't think he could beat the 19, but they showed us something for sure.
Well, again, look, part of that is the track position element of it, right? Like the way that Buescher and Reddick's strategy fell with the pit stops at different times, they had to pit before Truex. Truex probably could have run a lot longer, but he didn't want to be in a position where he was going to have to take more fuel. So he only waited a few laps longer than Buescher. What was the exact number here? Let me look. Only 3 laps. That surprised me. That really surprised me. I think Buescher sort of forced James Small's hand because Truex had originally pitted 19 laps. His pit stop was 19 laps after Buescher and Reddick. So he could have run a lot longer. But once Buescher pitted, they only waited 3 laps to come in. And then Buescher had already cycled out ahead of him, though. And then he never passed him again. And that was the race, right? So, and Truex wasn't going to short pit there because he was in the commanding position. It's just the way the race shook out with no more cautions. He was never able to regain that track position. If I'm understanding it correctly, does that sound right to you?
Sounds right to me. Sounds like you have the numbers right and how everything played out.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, that's just because, somebody was asking me, well, how did Buescher get ahead of Truex? I think it was just during that pit cycle. He just pitted earlier, and tires weren't a huge factor today, but I think those 3 laps, and then you combine that with traffic and things like that, that probably was the difference. And that was it. When and look, fantastic race for a race that ran the last 67 laps green. To have that was it's pretty good stuff. I mean,
it's the only fortunate thing is that more people didn't get to watch it because it was on a Monday afternoon. But this was probably the best Michigan race in recent memory. There's been a lot of good Michigan races, it feels like, the last few years, but this one certainly stands out as the best, if not one of the best, if not the best, because it was so good. And more lead changes, passing, everything you saw, and that argument, it's all about track position. And yeah, I mean, there's some element of that, but we saw cars come from the back today. We saw Hamlin do it. We saw Truex do it. We saw plenty of cars come from the back to the front. And I would be hard pressed to say what you would want out of Michigan. This is what you want. This is what you want to see. And then this was it.
Yeah, no, I thought it was great. And I think I saw Dustin Albino posted that this was the track record for the most different leaders. I think his number was 16. And that's over 106 Michigan races. Also, this says here there was 26 lead changes. And I need to scroll back all the way to 2012, one of the Greg Biffle wins at Michigan. The last time there was 26 lead changes in a race at Michigan. So,
yeah, and I would imagine off the top of my head, I bet you a lot of those were under green flag pit stops.
Yeah, you'd think so. Although that race did have 8 cautions, but you had 9 cautions today, which ties for the most since 2006. So, I mean, there was a lot of sort of like whatever sort of metrics you go through, it's always a combination of them that I think really checked a lot of the boxes for what made it compelling. And, Michigan to me, like, yeah, it's the rain really stinks, but it's really just so there's so many echoes of Pocono, right? There's so many similarities where You've reduced it to 400 miles. You only have one date. It's the fan enthusiasm. The infield looks great. Like it sort of seems rejuvenated. There was a great crowd before the rain. It just checks a lot of, it's doing a lot of things right now. It's sort of in that sweet spot of places that have found something that works for them. And, I think the racing there, especially now with Fontana going away, it sort of stands on its own as a unique track. And I think it's a very important track for NASCAR. I mean, the manufacturer part aside, it's just an important place for NASCAR to be.
I agree 100%. And I think the manufacturer component is a big part of it, though, too, because it's the three manufacturers, really particularly the Chevy and Ford. This is the one time of the year these guys are racing in our backyards. We can bring all our employees out to the racetrack, make this a big day, show our support. The week leading into the race, I know Ford does this. I'm pretty sure Chevy does this too. Is that they have drivers and the crew chiefs come out and they have meetings and pep talks and all of this stuff. It is a giant deal, and that is cool because it's not divided now among two different dates. It's all consolidated into one, and it just feels like this is special. And to me, it's a lot like golf. You don't see in golf, they don't go back to the same course twice a year. They go once a year, and it feels special when you go there. And I don't think you need that with I think there's a handful of tracks that deserve two dates, but Michigan isn't one of them, and they make it work. And it's great to see what was once a racetrack where we are like, oh, Michigan again. Oh, now it's like, all right, we're going to Michigan, and the enthusiasm there, much like Pocono, to some degree New Hampshire, though I don't know if it's quite to that extent, but certainly with Pocono and Michigan.
Yeah, man. Like, I mean, we talked about it, but we got to pick our, this summer stretch, right, is a lot of races that aren't like marquee events. I mean, you had Chicago, that was a marquee event. You and I both go there because it's like we need to be there to cover this. The other races, you're sort of like, which ones do we really go to? I put Pocono and Michigan on my schedule this year because I'm like, these are events that feel like I want to be there now. And like you said, I mean, to think that I would voluntarily go to those tracks where I once hated going and try to avoid them. It's really made a difference. Also, I just got to say, like, again, like the Ford aspect of this, if there was ever a year that Ford was going to snap their streak, talk about 9 wins in a row at Michigan now for Ford. Like, wow, this year of all years for them to get that done. Wow.
Yeah, and on top of that, there really wasn't another Ford organization today that did anything special. The Penske cars, particularly Logano and Blaney, were off. Blaney had his moments where he was kind of flirting with the top 10, but it really wasn't a factor at all. Logano was you barely heard his name mentioned today. Stewart-Haas Racing, Harvick was brutally bad on Sunday, much better today, but really nothing from the SHR cars at all. Front row, we heard a little bit about McDowell, but more because he had some issues, and it was in the playoff discussion, but nothing for what he was really doing on the racetrack. Just not a banner day for Ford outside of RFK carrying the flag again and winning this race. So, yeah, I mean, you would think that this was the year that this streak was going to be snapped. This was going to be it, but RFK comes through.
Yeah, I mean, Ford ultimately had 1, 2, 3, 4 cars in the top 10. So
who's the other one?
You had Blaney, Harvick, and the 2 RFK cars.
Okay. So, I mean, Harvick, kudos to Harvick, which goes back to what we talked about. That team, like as bad as they were on Sunday, like just find a way. They don't make excuses. They just put their heads down and go to work. And it's so impressive to me what they do. And Blaney, up and down, really not a great day to start with, but then turns it around. So somebody who needs to kind of start putting together some results here because it's been a struggle for him lately.
You mentioned McDowell, so let's talk about him because today he falls 1 spot down out of the top 16 in the playoffs. Ty Gibbs moves into it. This has actually been, I'm surprised this didn't happen earlier because McDowell the last few weeks has not been as strong, and it's just sort of been like, well, but he's still in the top 16. Like nobody's really capitalizing on it. This would have been great for Chase Elliott and Alex Bowman had they been able to capitalize on his misfortune. They were unable to do so. AJ Allmendinger the last couple weeks been unable to capitalize on that. He finishes 26th today. I think he had a loose wheel at one point. now he's really in the point where, he might have to win one of the road course races instead of being able to point his way in. I believe he is 24 points out.
24? Oh,
24 points out, I think.
Okay.
What would you
I
say?
thought it was 26, but that's fine.
Oh.
That's fine. I mean, he's, same.
Yeah. Looks like 24. So, but McDowell, he's only 3 points behind Ty Gibbs. He's going into 2 road courses plus a super speedway. So you don't feel terrible about his chances. He almost survived the part that you thought was going to be really hard for that team. That said, Ty Gibbs is a good road course racer, as is Daniel Suarez, who is only 2 points behind McDowell and 5 points behind Ty Gibbs. So this incredible battle for the final playoff spots is so compelling. And now that Bubba's moved up ahead, it's really that 16th spot. We're still waiting to see if there's going to be another new winner, but looking at the scoring monitor here, you have 3 drivers within 5 points for 1 playoff spot, and you still have Chase Elliott hungry, trying to win a road course race or Daytona. Alex Bowman, capable, certainly. And then there's a bunch of other drivers that, you never know if Eric Almirola or Justin Haley or somebody like that.
Austin Dillon.
Sure.
At Daytona.
Yeah. And then you've got, Cindric at a road course, perhaps. Yeah, I don't know. So that is a very, very interesting dynamic going on. And the fact that we still have that this late in the season, it's very, I wonder if we're going to be at Daytona really talking about, hey, there's the 16th spot is wide open on points. Nobody has won from outside that. And there's a definite legit points battle. However, any one of these people could also win and completely erase that. If that is the case at Daytona, and I know we're getting ahead of ourselves, that is going to be so fun and compelling to watch throughout that race. It is going to be changing the entire night. Like that's going to be crazy. But anyway, these next 3 weeks, these are going to be fun, really.
Two important things that I thought about as you're talking. One, McDowell's left a lot of points on the table. Last week at Richmond, strategy-wise, backfired on them, cost him some spots. Bubba, basically pulled away to a margin that's going to be hard to overcome on points. And this week, he left some points on the table too, damage early on, and now he's not even in the playoffs anymore. And it's almost, Allmendinger, Gibbs, and McDowell are 3 good road course racers. Obviously, I think Allmendinger's better than the other 2, but any of those guys I think are capable. It's going to be interesting to me, though. My second point is on road courses, you typically have 2 strategies, right? Like you either go for the win or you go for stage points. How do you crew chief that if you're one of these guys? If you're a McDowell or a Gibbs, do you say, hey, we've got a shot to win this race, but if we do that, we may sacrifice stage points that we may need. And if we don't win the race, then what position are we going to be in? I think it's a really easy call for AJ Allmendinger. You're going for the win. Like you got to go for the win at Indianapolis this week, and at Watkins Glen. That's your focus, and go for the win. Get this. Yeah, you don't think so?
I kind of disagree with you on that. I mean, it kind of depends what the others are doing. But okay, so we just said Allmendinger's 24 out, right?
Okay.
If he can gain, let's say he gains, say, 5 points each stage for the next road course races, and regardless of the finish, right?
Yep.
That's 20 points right there. All of a sudden, he's only 4 points out, just in theory. We don't even know where he finishes.
I get it.
That I don't know that you want to pass that up. I don't know that you want to, because again, now you don't know. We can't sit here today and say, well, Gibbs, McDowell, and Suarez are all not going to be in the top 10, so that you're gaining on them. They might not. I don't know. But I don't know that you want to pass that up and just say, we got to sell out for the win here. Because then if you don't get the win and you look back at Daytona and go, wow, you know what? We actually had a pathway and we kind of passed it up.
I get it. You're not wrong, and I get it. But I just feel like you're opening yourself up. One, if you're Allmendinger, you've got a really good chance to win these next 2 races. Really good chance. And if I have an opportunity to get a win,
I don't think he does. I'll be honest.
How do you not?
What have you seen out of Allmendinger and Colleague this year that makes you feel like they've got a really good chance to win at a road course?
it's AJ Allmendinger on a road course. I don't know what else.
I mean, that's true.
I don't know what else. I mean, like, I mean, that's honestly it. I mean, like, he's 6th at Sonoma. I mean, I'm looking at the numbers here real quick, so I apologize.
Yeah, no, I was about to go look at the same thing. We were both
yeah, I mean,
running to racing
I'm sorry, but
reference.
it's just at the end of the day, he was running strong at Austin. He got caught up in an accident. I don't know. I mean, to me, I'm sorry, but like, I have confidence in AJ Allmendinger on a road course. I really, really do.
So he was 17th at Chicago, and remember, we said even at that race, even though strategy, we were like, man, that was weird. He was never
They had a
factor all
bad day.
day.
I'm not going to lie, they had a bad day there.
Like you said, 6th at Sonoma and didn't lead a lap. Was never a factor there. And yeah, I don't remember what happened at Coda, how well he was running, but he qualified 7th there, crashed out, didn't lead a lap there. I don't know. Like, I just am wondering, like, where the evidence is that they're suddenly gonna turn things on. And
he's won at both of these tracks before in Cup. He won there 2 years ago. I know, different car. I get all that. I have confidence that he can go there and win. And if I can get a win and not have to worry about going to Daytona, where there's 2 big factors I got to keep in mind. One, I'm probably going to still be a few points separating us. So then who the hell knows what happens? And my fate really isn't in my hands there, because I could get caught up in a wreck out of my own doing. 2, somebody else surprises us and wins one of the next 3 races. All of a sudden, it doesn't matter what I'm doing points wise, because it ain't gonna matter. So at least if I go for the win, I have it in my I can say at least I went for it. Yeah, I fell short, but I wanted to control my fate, and that's where it's at.
I just feel like you have to sort of take the information you have in front of you and not worry about the what ifs as much, and just say, hey, look, we're just going to go for the points, and if somebody else new wins, we'll deal with that situation. But if there's a pathway on points, you kind of got to look at it, especially the way the season's been unfolding so far. Because I mean, I'm looking at a road course and going, well, like, who's your favorite? Who's your number one favorite that you would be riding with next week going into the Indianapolis road course?
I'm gonna go with SVG.
Oh, come on.
Why can't I? Come on. Kyle Busch said he's going to be ahead of everybody else. Kyle Busch, who we respect, who's got a much better understanding.
SVG is the favorite.
I am listening to Kyle Busch said that he's going to be as much of, the gap between him and everybody else wasn't going to be as wide as it was at Chicago, but it was still going to be, he was still going to have an advantage. I'm going to ride that train.
No way.
Until proven otherwise, why not? Did Busch not say that?
I'm sorry. I don't think so. I think a street course and a road course are very different things. I think, look, if SVG can finish in the top 10, I think that's great for him. That would say a lot, but I don't think I don't think he's going to go to Indy and do what he did. I mean, that if he does that, I mean, then Chase Elliott has a point where he made everybody look silly. And like you said,
so who's your favorite then?
Tyler Reddick.
Well, okay, and that's a very good answer. Very defending race champion in Indianapolis, won at Coda this year. But what about the 45 team inspires confidence at all that they're going to be able to stay out of their own way and execute a race without any issues, and to the point that they're going to win the race? Like, that's a really tall task right now for that team. They could do it. Tyler's a great driver. That team, when they execute, they're really good. I don't think you can have confidence that they're going to actually go do that.
I mean, that's a fair point. Yeah, I don't have a ton of confidence they're going to have a mistake-free race, but I feel like he's, the best road course racer in the series at this moment. So I feel like I'm just going to sort of ride the hot hand, so to speak.
He was 28th at Chicago. He was 33 at Sonoma. Like, I know he's got the win at Coda, but these aren't numbers that jump out.
The Sonoma thing, didn't his wheel? Wasn't he? First of all, he had the loop. He had the thing at Sonoma where he went the wrong way and got the 1 lap penalty.
Yeah,
but something else happened.
Yeah, but he wasn't in contention though, if I remember correctly.
I don't know. I have such a bad memory. Sorry, everybody. But then you've also got to consider Larson, Byron, Elliott.
Sure. I mean, honestly, you could make I don't
Truex.
think it's fair. You could, oh sure, 100%. You could make a list of what, 15 guys, honestly. I mean, I'd throw
Suarez, Chastain, Buescher,
Chastain,
McDowell,
Hamlin. Yeah, I
Hamlin,
mean,
sure.
like, I mean, it's, yeah, Bowman. Byron's in the mix. I mean, there's a long list of guys. I mean, sure, I would throw Briscoe on that list. I mean, Harvick. I mean, like, there's, it's a very, very wide open race. So to say one guy is the clear cut favorite. This isn't like when you go to Richmond like a week ago, we're all like, oh, well, we were wrong, but yeah, you got to pick a Gibbs. This is a Gibbs track, like. But it does feel like next week is going to be very wide open. I don't think you can pick one clear favorite. Now, I'm only picking SVG because he won the last road course race, and then Kyle Busch said that he's going to have the advantage. So I'm just gonna. That's the only thing I can go off of.
A lot of other drivers said that it's going to be different for him because they've got experience at the Indy road course. First of all, he's going to get used up more.
Oh yeah,
I mean,
but he's going to use people up too, I think.
I don't know. I think this style of racing is going to be a little bit rougher than. I mean, think about how Jordan Taylor getting out of the car sort of shell shocked at Coda, where he was like,
I understand that. But I've watched a lot of IMSA sports car races. They don't have the same physicality and no holds bar approach that they do in supercars. Like, come on, man, that's they get after it down there, and they throw bumpers and haymakers and everything, on the regular. I mean, it's going to be.
These guys will drive into turn one not expecting to make the turn and just plow into everybody.
It's going to be interesting.
Defending champion Joey Logano does that. So like,
I think it's going to be fascinating to watch. I mean, it's going to be very interesting to watch. I mean, if he goes there and does have like a great race or wins, like if I'm a team owner in a cup, I'm just like writing a check to like a blank check to him that here, whatever you want, you just come drive my car full time next year. We're going to go win one of these 5 road courses in the regular season and punch our playoff ticket. You just name your price.
I'm stealing this question from Denny Hamlin a little bit, but so he's also running the truck race at IRP.
Ooh.
So how's Shane Van Gisbergen going to do in the truck race at IRP? Is his stock car oval debut?
Ooh. Outside the top 20, that's where he's going to get used up. I think he spins at least once and finishes out well outside the top 20. I
mean, he's won a sprint car race. I mean, yeah. I know it's that's his only oval. He's never done any oval asphalt as far as I know, right?
Not that I'm aware of. I don't think so.
Yeah. I think that's going to be a challenge for him. I do. If he finishes top 15 in that race, that would be.
Well, I mean, and that series is just no one on a short track not even on a short track, on any kind of track.
Yeah. I mean, not only is he going to get used up essentially, but also you've got people that are just going to make mistakes.
Oh yeah.
Right.
Yeah. If I set the over under on 1.5, the number of incidents that he was involved in, would you take the over at 1.5 or the under?
I'd probably take the over, honestly.
I would too.
Not even it doesn't even have to be his doing.
No, I don't
know. That seems like a tall task, and that's sort of my I'm not sure to what extent he's trying to run next year, whether it's Cup, Xfinity combination, one full time. I don't know that, but it just seems like it's one thing again to come over and do the street course. And I mean, absolutely, for him to, drive opposite side, all the things that he did, incredible. Like nobody's taking anything away from that. But like, I don't care who you are. I don't care if you're Max Verstappen. You're not going to come run well on the ovals when you have no oval experience in a stock car. You're just not.
I hope somebody takes this snippet and then just captures it. NASCAR writer says Max Verstappen can't run NASCAR ovals.
I mean, he could run them, but he's not going to do well.
Yeah.
He's not. It's not an insult. It's just the level of experience. Lewis Hamilton, same thing. Like, what? You're laughing?
No, I'm just thinking of the clickbait folks out there are going to snippet this.
Max Verstappen comes and runs the IRP truck race. Where does he finish? In the best truck in the field. It's his debut. What would you say? Where would Max Verstappen finish?
I will give him the benefit of the doubt. I'll say top 15,
but not top 10.
Maybe. Who knows? I'm having flashbacks to Fernando Alonso at Indianapolis, who had he had no oval experience whatsoever. Goes there, almost should have won that race. And
It's still an open wheel car, though.
It's still
F1 to IndyCar is not as different as F1 to NASCAR, or IndyCar to NASCAR.
But I mean, it just goes. It's yeah. Listen, it's an adjustment. There's no doubt. But Juan Pablo Montoya, yeah, he ran ovals before, but he went from Formula One to NASCAR, and figured it out. He had some success. He figured it out, and
not to the degree that some people expected, though.
Depends on what your expectations were, but he won races, right? I mean, that's
he
should have won. He should have won at Indy a couple times, and
Yeah.
And so I mean, I mean, it's an adjustment for sure, and it's. I don't think NASCAR drivers get enough credit for their skill set and what they do, because a lot of people think, oh, you just jump in a car and you turn left. It's like there's a lot more to it than this, and then also the level of competition and the depth is much different. We're sitting here talking about how 20 different guys could win next week's race. You sure as hell don't get that in Formula One, or really any series for that matter.
Yeah. By the way, Montoya, in 255 career Cup starts, had 24 top fives, 59 top tens. So like
0 wins on an oval.
Yeah, never. I mean, so like, and he's about as world class as it gets.
Yeah.
So I just think it's hard, and that's not. Again, I'm not talking about their talent as a race car driver whatsoever. It's just the discipline.
I know.
Discipline is
I'm giving you our time.
Difficult.
I'm just thinking of there's going to be clickbait people out there. You know that.
Yeah, nobody listens to this to do clickbait. I mean, it's not like we're
I don't know. I've ended up on Reddit a few times from this podcast.
Well, that's because you say news stuff, not my opinions talking out of my butt here. All right. What else should we talk about here? Because let's see. Well, I'll tell you what. Just looking through the running order, I did want to say Eric Jones had a really good run for Legacy. Top 10 finish. He was actually running better than that at times in a week that was quite tumultuous for Legacy. Noah Gragson likes a very tasteless meme on Instagram, and that's enough to get him suspended by the team and then suspended indefinitely by NASCAR, which I'll be honest, I don't quite get that part of it, because like the team already suspended him. So like if NASCAR, like, couldn't they just say, all right, yeah, you have to do sensitivity training before you come back or something? Why did they have to suspend them also?
That's a great question. And I agree. I don't think you needed to do anything if you're NASCAR. You could have let this ride. You could have said, hey, the team's already suspended them for the weekend. We support their decision. We'll address it. We're going to go back. We're going to review it. Our penalty report comes out on Tuesday. We'll have a ruling then. You don't need to. There was no reason to make a decision now. I understand kind of why they did. I mean, public relations and optics and all of that stuff, it feels like, but I don't know. I would have probably waited. I don't think you needed to do that right now.
Yeah, it was, I don't know. It seemed like a little bit of piling on or something, because the team had already taken the action on him. You know what I'm saying?
That's what I'm saying. Like, it felt like, I mean, you agree, it's like a PR, it felt like kind of a PR thing.
Yeah, I mean, to me, that's what it did feel like. But I understand the message NASCAR is trying to send, not just 100%. PR, but like they're trying to say, hey, like, we don't stand for that.
I want to make sure we're not supporting at all what Noah did. Like, we both agree it was
stupid. Tasteless and not a very, I mean, just, in the best case scenario, Noah is lying in bed late at night, he's scrolling through, liking a bunch of memes, and he doesn't even think about it. He's just like, yeah, sure. And then somebody goes, hey, did you see Noah like this meme? And he's like, oh my gosh, I didn't even think what that was. Now, it's probably not true. I mean, maybe he did realize what it was, but that's the best case. That's still dumb, because like, I'm sure you're aware, Jordan, I'm aware, like we're all aware that when you like something on social media, other people can see it, whether it's Instagram, you go, I do it all the time when I see somebody's post, or like the NASCAR memes account, which you and I have loved recently. And, I'll go on to see, and I'll click and I'll say, oh, who liked this? Because I want to see who else is in on the joke, or like, and actually Noah is usually one of the ones that likes those memes. I know he's a meme person, not mean. And, so, maybe there's some mistake there and a misunderstanding, but still, you've just got to know, in your situation as a public figure, people are watching. If you like it on Twitter, if you like something on Twitter, it's going to pop up into people's feeds that you liked it. You didn't have to go look. Just says so-and-so liked this post.
Why I don't like posts.
You don't like any posts?
If you go look at my Twitter feed, the only posts that I like are all dog videos.
Oh, is that right?
I don't like. I've got a lot of people will like compliments and stuff, and I don't even like that. I'll even go back because sometimes you accidentally like something. You don't even realize it. You do. I will go back and frequently check and make sure that I didn't like anything, or just to make sure, like, you have to be very careful about who you follow, who you follow, what you like, and all of this stuff. And perception can become reality, and you have to be aware of that. And I don't know. It's I don't have an issue. I think Legacy did the right thing. I think suspending them for a weekend is a good punishment. I'm curious to see where this goes from here and what is next. What is NASCAR's reaction? I think sensitivity training is obviously in the cards. As you said, I didn't agree with the indefinite suspension. But the thing is Noah was already on thin ice at Legacy. Like, his return to that organization was very less than certain, shall we say. And it was a high probability he was going to be out of that car next year, at high probability. And and then this happened, and now we look at it and you're like, it seems like this door is closed.
Well, you had reported in your silly season roundup, what was it, a couple weeks ago or last week?
Tuesday.
Week, that he was on the hot seat. And then when Martin Truex Jr. announces this weekend in the bullpen scrum, hey, I'm coming back, that only seemed to almost seal it in some ways, because Legacy's moving to Toyota next season. Toyota needs to put John Hunter Nemechek somewhere. He's been waiting in the wings for a Cup ride. He's proven now that he deserves to be back at the Cup level and in a better ride than he started his Cup career at. His experiment to dip down to the Truck Series and sort of rebuild has proven to be successful, but they've got to have a place to put him. They don't want to lose him, and he can't just wait forever for Truex or Denny to retire and then just say, okay, yeah, I'll wait like 3 more years or something. You don't know how long it's going to be. Mm-hmm. So with Legacy moving to Toyota, it just seems like a natural place that they could put him. And you've also said that Toyota likes Eric Jones from their previous relationship with him, and Eric Jones is running well, and especially in a down year for Legacy, he's been able to get some good results. So it's unfortunate for Noah, because I think all rookies deserve more than a rookie year to show what they've gotten. But when you combine it with other factors like this, it's sort of like the Nick DeVries situation where, he didn't even get a full season in F1, and they're like, all right, we're making a move. It's really unfortunate, because I think, racing at the top level of any series, it's going to be a learning curve. Some take longer than others, and especially Legacy's not having a good year. So what do you really expect out of Gragson? But yeah, stuff like this is just, it's brutal for the longevity of your career,
Be interesting to see what his next step is. I don't think this is a career ender by any means. I think he'll get out.
He's overcome plenty of stuff like this before.
And
not same as this, but you think about the Road America thing with Stage Karam last year, and at the time it seemed like, wow, this is a really bad look for Noah. He kind of owned it. He moved on, and you really don't. I mean, it came up last Road America, last week, but you really don't think about it much anymore. So this is the kind of thing that's ultimately a blip. However, if it costs you your ride, like you said, maybe he was already going to lose anyway, but this may have accelerated it. So maybe that's something that stays with you longer. But I don't know. I don't know where he goes from here.
I don't either. It's gonna be interesting. I mean, interesting to see. There's some opportunities potentially in the Cup, in the Xfinity Series, but the thing there too is a lot of those rides, you do need to bring funding and sponsorship with you. And he's got a little bit of sponsorship with him, but I don't know if he's got enough to secure one of those big Xfinity Series rides, or if you move back to the Truck Series. I don't know. It's gonna be interesting to see what he does from here.
Yeah. Well, again, another part of that was Truex coming back. We were like, oh, kind of back and forth, couldn't really tell what was going on with him. And then he says he's made his decision and kind of be stupid not to come back. When you look at cars like he had today, you're like, well, I could see why. Funny thing that also, plays into it, I think, in some ways. So we were doing a 12 questions interview, right? And he said he wanted to wait on his question for the next guy. So I texted Truex on like last Tuesday, and I was like, hey, do you have a question I can ask the next interview? No response for like days, right? And I hope Bill Janitz isn't going to be mad at me for this, his PR guy, but I texted Bill Janitz on Friday morning because my next interview was coming up with McDowell on Saturday morning. I'm like, hey, Bill, I haven't heard from Martin yet. Like, have you heard from him? Like, and he's like, oh no, he'll go like 3 or 4 days at a time without looking at his phone, like legitimately. Like,
yeah.
And I'm like, wow, imagine that. Like you have the lifestyle where you can go like a few days during the week, maybe not every week, but a few days at a time during the season, and like totally disconnect and not even look at your phone. By the way, he did text me back Saturday morning. He once he looked at his phone, he got back to me in time for the interview. But I was just like, wow, why would you want to? And you're getting paid. You're still getting paid tons of money. You're driving the best cars in the series, and you can disconnect during weeks in the season. Like, yeah, keep going, Martin. Like, so anyway, he decided to keep going. He will clearly be a championship contender this year and probably next year as well, assuming, JGR and Toyota still have good cars. So, I would expect to hear a lot more from old Martin. Not via text, though.
I've actually added a second phone to my repertoire.
Oh, really? Is it a burner?
Maybe.
Because I don't have your number on the second phone.
You do not have my number.
What's going on there?
Just working.
Wait a minute. You have a second phone, and you're not giving me your number.
No.
So is it a burner?
You got my other. You got the main number. That's all you need.
Well, what's that one for?
It's for other work stuff.
Work stuff?
Yeah.
Or
don't get me in trouble. Do not get me in trouble again.
Okay. I mean, it sounds like the kind of person that would say that you do your best work on a Saturday night.
You know what I meant by that, and that proved to be okay. That worked out.
Okay. Not a lot of listeners knew what you meant by that.
No,
I didn't know what you meant by that either. So, all right. Well, that's kind of weird that you claim that we're friends and you won't give me your other phone number, but whatever.
You've got the main one.
Okay. By the way, I hope you made one of those an iPhone now. Stop.
No, I'm not doing
you bought another Android?
What's wrong with that?
You bought 2 Androids?
I'm on Team Android.
God, at least if you're going to buy another phone, buy at least one iPhone, have one Android, so you can see what you're missing.
Maybe now you're making me think I should take it back. Get an Apple.
You should. Apple. Never buy an Android.
Oh, I love Androids.
I know you do. Anyway, sorry.
No, but I mean, you're right about Martin, though. I mean, it's a really, in a very sponsor-driven world where drivers are pulled in all these different directions and everything else, and they're traveling here, traveling there during the week. Like, Martin has got a sweet gig. He's got a really sweet gig. He's got very loyal sponsors who love him, a few times a year, Johnny Morris will say, hey, I want you to come to an event. And by the way, we're going to be hunting or fishing or, something that you're going to want to do anyway. And other than that, he can kind of go do his own thing. He's he might be the only driver who can really detach because he doesn't have to do all this stuff. And you're with a competitive team, you're winning races, you like your guys, you've got sponsors who are very loyal to you. Like, you look at all of this situation, and I know it's a grind and all of this stuff, but man, like, it's a pretty damn good situation that a lot of other drivers would be very envious of.
Yep, for sure. Well, should we talk about the was it a good race poll, or is there anything else?
We got everything on my list, so let's do it.
All right. Well, you let me creep ever closer last week by blowing your Richmond guess. So I'm really within range here, folks. I could really pull off the stunning comeback that Chase Elliott was not able to do on points. I'm the Chase Elliott of the was it a good race poll. I have not wrecked yet. However, this is a tricky one. This is another tricky one where I think it was a pretty good race. I did see some like, well, it was aero blocking and you can't pass the leader, so it wasn't good. It was good, folks. It was good. It was good racing. It was.
Chris had a very fast car, like, and his car got better. And Martin came on the radio and said, like, his car had gotten a little worse. Like,
yeah, he said he was free and stuff, right? Yeah.
Which is the first time all day he said anything bad about his car.
Look, it was a good. I don't even know why I'm just trying to justify this. I guess I'm trying to justify it in that I'm trying to guess how many people will say it wasn't a good race. So I think it's going to be high one. I think it's going to be high. I'm worried about going too high, but I'm also worried that you'll go a little bit higher and box me in. So I hate to do this. I feel like I might be making a mistake here, but I'm going to go 86%.
Wow. Okay.
That is higher than you thought.
Yeah, my number is 82.
Okay.
A drop. I was always going to go 82.
Okay.
I think the fact that it's a Monday race too. I'd love to see the numbers on this Monday races. We should, if we ever have time, we should figure that out. See if that's impacted at all.
Because people couldn't watch, they automatically voted no.
Like they're watching, they don't really get to see it, so they're not, they might impact their others. Like, oh, Martin Truex Jr. won, or whoever won, whatever. Yeah, I like your guess. I get it. I respect it. Would that be the highest Michigan race of all time?
Oh, you always think that I'm going to I've done my research.
I'm sorry that you put a little time and effort and, into researching things and be prepared. I take notes. I come prepared.
Well, no, actually, last year's Michigan race won by Kevin Harvick is in the 90% club, 90.7. It
was a great race.
So that would be 86 would not be the highest Michigan race. It would be the second highest. So
I'm gonna go 82. I'm just gonna stick with it. We'll see.
Okay. I can respect that for sure.
Yeah.
I do think it'll be positively received.
I think so. It should be.
I mean, the second highest Michigan race ever was the 2020 first part of the doubleheader, which was 77.3. I was at that one.
Mm-hmm.
That was a fanless race. God, I tell you what, Jordan, just as a quick aside before we end here. So I was back at Michigan for the first time since that fanless doubleheader weekend. And at that weekend, I wasn't even allowed to go into the infield because I think only Bob was allowed to go in the infield back then because he was Fox and they had some sort of, So yeah, I was up in the press box and there was no fans. We parked like right underneath the grandstands, like right next to the elevator, the spotters and everybody. And, you had to wear your masks in the press box the entire time and be super spaced out from everybody. And, you can only take your masks off to eat your lunch. I had all these flashbacks of like, oh yeah, all these things about the pandemic that I forgot about, sitting in the press box this weekend. First of all, God, so glad we got past that. I remember after that race, I just sat there in the empty stands for a while before I left. Like, man, because I hadn't hardly traveled any races. I think that race was the first.
That was your first NASCAR race during the pandemic. I remember that specifically.
Yeah, the first one I'd gone to since the Phoenix one right before it shut down.
Yep.
And I was just like, man, this is such a privilege to be able to come to races. And honestly,
you wrote that actually. I'm pretty positive you wrote that.
I probably did. But every single time, I kid you not, every single time I've left a track since then, I have been way more conscious about trying to soak it up and appreciate it and just think, well, what if for some reason, this is my last one, something crazy happens in the world. You never know. We lived through it where all of a sudden things got shut down. And, it's made me appreciate being at all these tracks so much more, even Michigan and Pocono. And, just being able to go to the track. And I think that's a big reason why you're still seeing the attendance boom right now, like people coming in droves to these races because people are still wanting to get out and say, hey, like, let's go to this race while we can. It's here. It's one race a year. Let's go. Let's have fun again. Let's relive this. So I think I think NASCAR's in a decent place right now. And you're seeing that with some of the enthusiasm in the crowds lately at the track. So Indianapolis should be an interesting test. I don't know what the crowd's going to be for that. The IndyCar doubleheader. Probably be
the last one.
probably be better. Well, they'll go back to the oval, and then who knows how long they'll stay on the oval.
Yeah, we'll see. I don't think. I mean, IndyCar's. I mean, from reports that are out there, it's that IndyCar race next year that's at IMS is going to be shifting.
Oh, you're saying the last doubleheader? I thought you meant the last.
It's the last
NASCAR
doubleheader.
It's
the last NASCAR IndyCar doubleheader, at least at Indy. Who knows elsewhere? But yeah, it's tough because I do think it's a cool weekend. It's a super weekend, and everybody kind of comes, and it feels like an event, and it's cool to see that. I think I'd probably lay out the schedule differently and everything, and how you coordinate the events. But it's a cool weekend. It's gonna be sad that it's gonna go away.
No, it's not. No, it's not.
I don't think
it's going to be sad because I don't really find much redeeming, honestly, about the Indy road course. I just want if they're going to be there, go on the oval. We've said this a zillion times. Now it sounds like they are going to go on the oval. They're doing a test, and Denny Hamlin said it perfectly this weekend. He said there's a lot of chatter about what the fourth major is in NASCAR now that the Brickyard 400's gone, and Denny was like, there isn't one. You can't just make up and say, well, this one's the fourth major now. That race was the fourth major because of the importance of being on the oval historically, and everybody wants to win on the oval at Indy. It's not just winning at the Brickyard, it's winning the Brickyard 400, it's winning on the oval, and that's the prestige. So NASCAR will get its fourth major back next year. In the meantime, another road course race, sort of the parking lot type race. But I get it. It was a good try. I don't think it's necessary at this point. So I'm ready to see this one go by and get back to the oval.
It's weird because I was a proponent of going to trying the road course. I just kind of had grown tired of the oval races, and I felt like the racing wasn't very good. But now, as time has passed, and it's only been a few years, I have a better appreciation for what the oval was. Yeah, the racing wasn't the best, but the best teams, man, showed up. Like, you look at the guys who won that race year in and year out, it was always, more often than not, it was the guys who were in the championship hunt or the championship favorite. Because like Michigan, we talked about, you had to have everything working for you to win there. You didn't back into wins there. And I miss that. And I learned to appreciate that better now. Like, yeah, maybe the racing wasn't the best, but a lot of that was the car or whatever in this. And with this car, I'm excited. I'm ready for it to be back on the oval. You get a major back, you get the significance. You can't replicate that elsewhere. I think it's going to be the right move. I think I think it was a worthy experiment to try to see if it works, to see if you could kind of keep the same magic. It didn't work. Not everything you do is going to work sometimes. This one didn't work, and now you're going to go back to the oval, and hopefully it's better next year.
Well said. Well, we'll talk about that more, of course, next week on the Teardown. And in the meantime, thanks everybody as always for listening. And I already said we'll talk to you next time. So why don't you close this out, Jordan? I always close it out.
Thanks for listening to Teardown. We'll talk to you next week from Indianapolis Motor Speedway.